We're back in action here for week 5. Notre Dame 3-1 with a victory over Miami of Ohio, 28-3. We're not going to dwell on that too much. We already have quite a bit after the game, and on Sunday we're moving on to Louisville week. I'm Tim Priester with Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated, John Bryce of Irish Illustrated and Football Scoop, not necessarily in that order, but Louisville's coming to town, and Tim, I said this on the way leaving Marcus Freeman's press conference. Notre Dame's lost to Louisville last year. What was the point spread? Notre Dame was favored by how much?
Six.
6.
Yep.
And this year, or at least currently, it's 5.5. That wasn't an upset last year, and it wouldn't be an upset this year. These are two very evenly matched teams. I think Louisville's very good. Jeff Brom continues to be successful wherever he is, and he's taken Louisville. I think Louisville has a chance to win the ACC and to be a top 4 seed in the 12-team playoff.
Yeah, and they have a lot of the pieces back defensively from last year's win over Notre Dame. Offensively, it's been a major change, but the portal provideth in 2023 for Louisville, and the portal provideth again in 2024 for Louisville. So Brom with skill position talent and a quarterback that can manage it is dangerous. It's going to put more pressure on Notre Dame's offense, or excuse me, on Notre Dame's defense that they have seen this season by a long shot. In my opinion, that's a reflection of Notre Dame's offensive opponents this year. And then Ashton Gelati was not contained last year. Neither was TJ Quinn. I don't know how good TJ Quinn is, but Ashton Gelati is extremely good. So TJ Quinn had a day against Notre Dame, kind of like Jawar Jordan had a day against Notre Dame as a running back. Gelati will have to be, he is the focal point of this game for Notre Dame.
Yeah, Louisville is protecting Shaw really well, only giving up 2 sacks and around 85 pass attempts or something like that. As you noted, they're down a receiver for the remainder of the season, and he had impressed early, but they do have good depth there. That's probably the position on their team where they have the best depth. And as they protected the quarterback well, they have not run the football quite as effectively, especially in their ACC opener this last weekend against Georgia Tech. I thought they were very disappointing running the football in that regard. And Georgia Tech was in that game the entire way, and it was 17-17 in the second half. And then Georgia Tech also blocked a Louisville field goal or PAT attempt and ran it back for its final 2 points. So much like Notre Dame, Louisville had some special teams hiccups showing up this past weekend. But again, Jeff Brom is an offensive mastermind, and he has his thumbprints all over that Louisville offense. And Notre Dame has to show that it can respond much better to the Louisville challenge on the front end and in-game adversity as the contest unfolds this Saturday.
I'm guilty of burying the lead here. We just came from Marcus Freeman's press gathering, and Marcus Freeman announced that Jaden Mickey, the junior cornerback for the Irish, who really did a nice job on Saturday against Miami of Ohio with the Red Hawks trying to avoid Benjamin Morrison. Jaden Mickey has decided to put his Notre Dame career to an end, bring his Notre Dame career to an end, and enter the transfer portal. He's played 4 games, so he can preserve a year of eligibility. That means Leonard Moore and Carson Hobbs have to step up next with the security of Jordan Clark and Rod Hurd II. Also possibilities, but that's not really the point. Jaden Mickey had a rough go of it here with the passing of his mother last year and never could quite fulfill the potential that he showed as an early entry freshman a couple years ago. But so Notre Dame has answers on the football field, but Jaden Mickey will not be on the Notre Dame team any longer. Josh Burnham is still doubtful. Is it questionable? Questionable for
He's questionable.
the game this weekend, but I would imagine that they would go ahead and use the bye week and bring him back for Stanford. And tight end Cooper Flanagan is out, so big opportunity for Eli Raridan this weekend.
Yeah, and Jaden Mickey, it's going to hurt if they lose Gregor Morrison. I think Jaden Mickey next year might not have won a starting job over Gray and Leonard Moore and Carson Hobbs in that situation. But right now, I especially the way he played this last game, Jaden Mickey is their 3rd best corner. So it does hurt Notre Dame. It does make total sense. I liked Marcus Freeman's answer. It's not for him to judge. It's Jaden Mickey's life and career that he's looking to augment. He's going to have 2 years to play college football now instead of 1. I mentioned on Instant Analysis, I figured he was going to transfer at year's end way back in the spring. So I do think it hurts. It doesn't destroy like it would back in the day for Notre Dame's corners, where if you lost Jaden Mickey, you'd be like, well, now what in the world are we going to do? They have two very good replacements, but they can't afford the injury. I mean, do you want Christian Gray to miss a game now? What if Christian Gray goes in against Louisville? Would you like Jaden Mickey to be in that game? Or
No doubt.
USC?
No doubt.
That's kind of how I look at the loss of Jaden Mickey here.
Yeah, I think it's significant if Notre Dame doesn't keep its health in the
Yeah.
secondary. Otherwise, I think that they recover nicely, seamlessly on special teams with some of the younger players that have already been carving roles on those units. And I do think that all we've heard about Leonard Moore and his progress and coming along is that it was inevitable that he was going to pass Mickey. Now he's passed Mickey by default, and he must rise to the occasion. But I think that Mickey, again, I understand his decision as well. It stinks for Notre Dame in the here and now. But he played by far, I think, the best game of his collegiate career, 23 games or 27 games, I think, of his Notre Dame tenure. His best one was his last one, and he's got to preserve it after that fourth game, and he's got to move forward for what he believes is best. But I like the upside of that group. I still think 1-2 that Ben Morrison and Christian Gray are the best 1-2 corners in America. There's arguments out there for Travis Hunter and the kid at Michigan as being the best overall corner alongside Ben Morrison. I think those three are all incredibly elite and probably are all three going to be first round NFL draft picks. But this is tough, but at least they had the meeting today. We'll see if there's any more meetings moving forward, maybe in the open date week.
For what it's worth, I think we've all kind of been chiming in a little bit about Marcus Freeman's demeanor since the Northern Illinois game. Kind of seemed like he was in the tank a little bit, along with everybody else after the loss of Northern Illinois. I think we saw some of the old Marcus Freeman personality come back out today. He just was, I guess, sullen and somber were two of the words that I used in my column yesterday in recent weeks. But look, big opportunity this week against Louisville, and so he was a little bit more glib in some of the things that we talked about. He certainly was very complimentary of Emil Wagner's hustle on the play that Jeremiah Love still gets credit for as a touchdown. But if you look at it closely, it looked like he fumbled before he got to the end zone. So Emil Wagner's hustle got that assured that Notre Dame had the touchdown there. We talked a little bit about red zone defense. I brought that up to Marcus Freeman because Notre Dame's red zone defense continues to be outstanding. If they don't hold Northern Illinois to a field goal and then the interception in the red zone, this could be a very different ballgame if they get in the end zone. Notre Dame is now 7th in the country in red zone touchdown percentage defense. They were, off the top of my head, I'm not sure last year, but I'm sure it was in the top 10. And they really struggled in the first year that Al Golden did it. Guys, if you could talk a little bit about Marcus Freeman's response to that, to my questions about, did they change things after that first year? I thought his answer was interesting.
You had to change some stuff, but we talked to Al Golden about it going into last year. I think he got sick of it because he kind of mentioned, he said a few times, and he was right about this. Notre Dame, I'm going to estimate here in 2022, they faced 33 snaps inside the 10-yard line, and Notre Dame won 26 of them.
Wow.
But then they gave up the touchdowns.
Yeah.
They didn't give up the field goals on those other sevens.
They were third and fourth down touchdowns.
Yes, they were third and fourth downs. Jack Kaiser was the king of the first and second down stuff, and then third and fourth down were touchdowns. So I think Golden, rightly so, kind of looked at it as we're right there. There's a couple things we have to tweak. Marcus Freeman said, I believe, we had patience, but patience needs preparation. Otherwise, patience is just waiting. I thought that was really well said. It's almost like he knew the question was coming, which is impossible in this situation because red zone defense was not like a Riley Leonard question. But they've been really good now for a year and a quarter in the red zone, and they better be this week. There's gonna be more red zone visits. It's just a better offense. I mean, it's a better offense that Notre Dame's come close to facing.
Yeah, and after again, some people kind of laughed when we did the pod a couple of weeks ago, and I said, let me see who USC really is before I make a decision. I think this will be the best offense that Notre Dame faces all season. I really believe that. Georgia Tech can do some nice things with Haynes King. Florida State, Florida State barely won with 14 points. DJU does not elevate his teammates. He's not elevated his own game. But when you look at the schedule, from coaching to personnel to everything else, I think this Louisville offense is the best left on the schedule, then probably USC, and then probably Stanford. Stanford's doing some nice stuff offensively, but it's a tremendous test. And Notre Dame is defensively right now, like it was under Chip Long offensively in 18 and 19 when they were among the best offensive red zone scoring units in all of college football.
I would make a case for Georgia Tech's offense, although Louisville held them to, what was it, 19 points, two of those coming off of a Tyler Shuck safety last weekend. But look, Louisville's good. To the point about USC, although I can't say that I've watched anything other than a couple highlights, but from what I'm told and what the statistics say, I think USC is still adjusting to the physicality of the Big Ten, and I think we'll see that. I think that will be a common thread or something that we'll keep an eye on as the season goes along. But other things from the press conference, Marcus Freeman got a call from his dad. He was probably not too happy about what his son, had to say to Adon Schuler when Adon Schuler made a bad mistake at the end of the first half. And instead of Notre Dame has a rule about handing the football to the refs. Not everybody does it, and Adon Schuler didn't. In fact, he tossed it into the Miami, Ohio sideline, and that drew a penalty. And Marcus Freeman was trying to call timeouts to get another opportunity offensively. And I've been on that side of the coaching fence where you just absolutely lose it, and he lost it. But he also said that it was a good give and take with Adon Schuler, and eventually you tell the kid, "I love you," but you can't do that. And
Yeah.
Schuler took full responsibility, which what little we know about Adon Schuler, the young man and the personality, we're not surprised that Schuler said, "It's on me, coach. I accept it. I own it."
I had a major eye roll when he did it because anyone that's ever played a football or basketball game in their life and has handed the ball to the opponent is automatically flagged or teed up. It's a fun thing to do. It really is, but it draws a fight. It draws a fight usually, and it's an automatic tee. And when you flip it into the bench in front of the ref, I mean, at least make it count. Hand it to the guy you did something to. But no, I thought it was an interesting exchange, and I thought Freeman making the point, like someone said, I believe he was asked a one-sided conversation. He goes, "No, it was a two-sided conversation. We talked about it, but Marcus Freeman has to talk first in that situation." And
it was, yeah, exactly. It was one-sided for a little bit, certainly.
I've seen one-sided conversations between Carlo Calabrese and Brian Kelly. That was not the same thing. This was, I think it was a teaching moment, and like Riley Leonard's fumble, I want to put this on the airwaves somewhere. I haven't been able to find a way to do it. I think that fumble was good for Riley Leonard, because he thinks he can, and this is a compliment too, but he thinks he can just manhandle people when he's running in traffic. He's about to face guys that are stronger than Miami of Ohio, Northern Illinois, no offense, and Purdue. That extra yardage he was going for is part of Riley Leonard's. That's part of his aura. That's what he thinks. I can always get extra yards. That was a very sloppy fumble that will happen every single time if he does it. Adon Schuler got a learning message, and Riley Leonard had a learning moment too.
Yeah, Riley didn't transfer the football into the arm closest to the sideline. That is a teaching point. Don Schuler, I understand why the flag was thrown, but it was pretty ticky-tack. He didn't throw it with any zest into the sideline. He didn't bury it in the guy's gut. To me, it just
I would bury it in the gut. You get something out of it viscerally.
Right. I know. To me, it was just like he knew they got a third down stop. He was flipping him the football as if to say, "You don't need this anymore because you don't have possession." So, but yeah, no shock whatsoever that he handled it properly. We'll learn from it. And he's probably taught the best lesson possible for Notre Dame in this situation, because now they have tangible evidence to say, don't screw around with this. And it really didn't hurt them, and then move forward from it.
We have not said a whole lot about Riley Leonard and his performance. We have a ton of questions. We will get into that. I will say, sometimes when you watch the tape, you get a little bit different perspective. His inaccuracy carried throughout the whole game. That didn't change, but over, the last 38 minutes of the game, he played he played pretty good football, winning football, and so hopefully that's something that he can build upon. We will save the commentary about Riley Leonard, positive and negative, until segment 2, when we have burning up the boards. Looking to upgrade your wardrobe? Founded by ND alum Gao Wang, you've seen ESQ's custom clothing on the player walk and all of your favorite players and coaches. With over a decade of making the best bespoke clothing available, ESQ will help you look and feel your best. From a perfect fitting suit or sport coat, shirt, or bomber jacket, or that perfect tuxedo for wedding season, check out esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention Irish Illustrated and get 10% off your entire purchase. That's esqclothing.com. Segment 2 coming up, burning up the boards.
If you're coming to a game this season, you have to check out Game Day Your Way, Notre Dame's tailgate service provider. Game Day offers everything you need, including tailgate gear, catering, and even beverage delivery right to your spot. And their Irish Express transportation from Chicago allows you to tailgate while you travel to their all-inclusive party zone in South Bend. Let Game Day deal with all the hassle so you can focus on the fun. For tailgates, tickets, transportation, and more, visit GameDayYourWay.com.
Welcome back to segment 2, Burning Up the Boards. Our first question from Backer Tiki. Is it okay to be slightly encouraged by Riley Leonard's passing performance? After a horrid start, I thought he made a noticeable effort to climb the pocket and drive the ball to his receivers. Could his last 2.5 quarters be a building block for Louisville?
And we're hoping. Well, I mean, you have to hope, because, and again, even during those last 2.5 quarters, he missed receivers. He's just not very accurate. And that's why he's still completing, believe it or not, he's completing 62% of his passes, but that's why he's not a 68% completion guy, because he just misses too many layups, as Marcus Freeman referred to it today. But yeah, I mean, I really thought after the 2 horrendous throws to Mitchell and Flanagan, that again, I mean, that set the tone for it. Didn't matter what he did after that. There would be a cloud hanging over his performance, but he did throw 4 passes in that first touchdown drive that converted first downs. Now his completions totaled 19 yards in that drive, but
they're protected throws. We used the term a couple times. They were
no doubt. But look, you're looking for a little bit of a silver lining and some progress, and that was progress. He came up big when they had to. And Tim turned to me at one point during the game and said, he's the only one that can be given the offensive MVP, as even though he missed those shots that he had. But it also, again, this is something Marcus Freeman talked about. Teams have to account for his running ability, and that puts Notre Dame up in a position where you do have to take shots downfield. They drew a couple pass interference calls, and he hit the one to Collins. So I mean, it's baby steps, but if he can get a little bit of confidence in himself, a couple of those misses are yips, are just not a lot of confidence in himself. The crowd's booing him, which doesn't help, but I understand why that's being done. But maybe it's something he can build upon the last 2.5 quarters, not exonerating the way he's played. Let's be realistic here.
I think on the micro, you take building blocks from Riley Leonard's performance, particularly the last 36 minutes of the contest. And I think on the macro, you take confidence from it and hope that you're seeing Notre Dame collectively building on it, because they held Miami scoreless the final 42 minutes of the game. As you guys have both noted at depth, they were really good red zone defensive wise. They were good forcing turnovers again. And then Riley Leonard stepped up and did some more things, worked the middle of the field and tested downfield. I think the fact that he didn't have a ball picked off and that receivers drew a couple of penalties are almost bigger than the TD pass to Bo Collins, just because Riley needed to see that this past weekend against Miami, there were good outcomes every time he threw a deep ball, whether it was the PIs or the completions or the touchdown. You'll take all of those. You'll love all of those. And there was not a pick. And he said he had confidence that Jaden Harrison wouldn't let it be a pick when he underthrew him a little bit on that shot into the end zone. So yeah, I think you have to be encouraged. Another thing I would point out is, like, part of coaching, especially, you've got NIL, so there's free agency to an extent in college athletics right now. But part of coaching, and one of the more important parts of coaching, is scheming up to mask your own weaknesses. And Notre Dame giving Riley Leonard some layups and some intermediate passes and still using him as in the run game, not only tailors to Riley Leonard's strengths, stays away from his weaknesses, but it gives that offensive line more and more time to coalesce. Again, this is not an offensive line just producing clean pockets every single time and Riley Leonard is taking off running. There are multiple elements at work. So yeah, I absolutely strongly believe that's a building block, but it's imperative that it become a building block this week.
Yeah, he can't have the yips. He just never had the yips. I find it strange. I look back. We have talked at length about his deep throws at Duke, how he was 4 for 17 last year, but he was 22 for 51 with 10 touchdowns and 2 picks in 2022, which, by the way, Notre Dame would race to 13-0 without looking back if Riley Leonard did that this year for Notre Dame. He was 74% under 10 yards, down 0 to 10 yards. He was 77% last year, 74% the other year. For the sake of reference, if that doesn't sound good, bad, or indifferent, Sam Hartman was only 81%, and Sam Hartman is an incredibly accurate college quarterback, just throwing regular balls. So I don't expect Leonard to have the yips again. I didn't expect Leonard to throw the way he has this year, though. So I think it is a huge step forward that they are finding something that works for Leonard. And the most important is that if you're going to run Leonard, you have to push the ball down the field. If Riley Leonard's your number 2 option behind Jeremiah Love, and he's actually their number 1 option probably, that's not always a compliment that Riley Leonard has to be the MVP of the game. That's not necessarily a compliment that there was no one else to choose. I couldn't choose a receiver. I couldn't choose a running back. As Tim pointed out, I can't choose an offensive lineman because it's not on tape. You're not watching the game. You're watching the game live. Riley Leonard, the runner, has to be complemented by Riley Leonard, the deep ball thrower, taking some chances downfield. You don't win games by running and throwing 6-yard passes. That's just going to be really difficult against Louisville.
And I don't think we mentioned this here. We mentioned in our instant analysis after the Marcus Freeman press conference, Quincy Riley, the outstanding cornerback for Louisville, is listed as, is it questionable or doubtful, JB?
Questionable.
So,
and one other thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No. I mean, that's really key. That guy's outstanding. He had a pick against Notre Dame last year. Everybody expected him to turn pro this year, and he didn't. He came back, and same with Ashton Gelati, their outstanding defensive end. So if he's compromised this weekend, God bless you. Notre Dame needs it.
I was just going to follow up on Riley Leonard being the number 2 offensive weapon behind Jeremiah Love right now. And I'm not disputing you, T.O., in that regard, but I think you could make an argument that you've got to have Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price on the field more than a combined 46 snaps, which is what they got against Miami of Ohio, when you know that the starting O-line unit, those 5 guys, got 60 snaps together. So you'd like to see both of those guys. Maybe it's 35-25, and maybe it's just part of pacing them. Maybe we will see a much heavier diet of Love and Price this weekend, but I think more of them on the field is very much needed for Notre Dame's offense.
Oh, I'm with you. And Notre Dame's the way Notre Dame beats Louisville is if we're looking for offensive MVP, and I look at one of you guys and I say, do you think it's Love, Leonard, or Evans? That's when the question has to be early. Is it Love, Price, or Evans? Something like that. That's when you have an offense that can be clicking for Notre Dame. Next question from M. Lindbergh. Why has the running game been so boom or bust?
I think it's a lot of the factors we just outlined. There hasn't been consistency there. There was this past weekend was 60% new starters from what they opened camp with, and they opened camp with a whole new starting offensive line effectively, aside from Craig and Shrouth, who had the grand total of 6 combined starts. So I think it's been little things. Now, I noticed the play. I wonder how much you guys noticed it. They did more this week, bringing their tight end in motion and crashing that guy into the line. Predominantly, it was Mitch Evans, but I did see Eli Raritan do it a couple of times. It was a beautiful play. And Notre Dame, there were multiple of those plays that were 9, 10, 11-yard gains, I want to say. 8-yard gains might have been about the lowest when it was executed really well. But I thought when I watched them live and watched them over, that play particularly was almost broken 2 to 3 times in this past weekend's game. Then Notre Dame did an awesome wrinkle out of it because they brought the tight end in motion. They crashed him into the center of the line of scrimmage. They faked the handoff, and Riley Leonard tucked it and ran around in, and the end had crashed because they had set it up so well at that point. And sure, Louisville's going to see that on film yesterday and today and going into the week. And so that end's going to try to be more mindful of it. But it's one thing to set the edge in practice. And when you see that live executed well, and you know how explosive Jeremiah Love or Jadarian Price can be, and they fake that handoff, and then Riley Leonard pulls it around the edge, that's a potential big time element for Notre Dame. So I loved that new wrinkle in the offense that I had not remotely noticed, not to any extent in the opening 3 games.
Well, Notre Dame's issues in the running game certainly don't have anything to do with Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. When they have a sliver, they take advantage of it, especially Jeremiah Love.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just
I wonder, Tim,
offensive
I
line's
wonder,
chemistry, man.
I do wonder, I'd love to ask Deland, I guess we won't have a chance to. I'll ask Denbrock, is any of Jadarian Price's boom or bust rate, he has a high stuff rate for the amount of runs he has, but when he's either gets 15 to 70 yards or he gets -1. It's really, this was his best game in that regard, avoiding that.
Yeah.
But I wonder how much, if any, is on him. If any, I'm not.
No, I think it's. I think
does he
it.
not take the 4 and 5 that Jeremiah Love takes? And
Yeah.
I think it's something I can ask Denbrock.
I want you to ask that question. I want to be there when you ask that question because I mean the question. On one hand, it's like there are obvious answers as to why it's boom or bust because of the offensive line. But I think that's a good question, and we will address that just as I will be. I'm really looking forward to talking to Al Golden about red zone. I won't talk too much about 2 years ago because he might get upset about that, right?
I would just not even mention it.
No, just talk about. But I mean, I will couch it in similar fashion as I did to Marcus Freeman. And that'll be a story you guys can look for on Wednesday. Question from Kay Beasley. Louisville seemed to win both sides of the line of scrimmage last year. What concerns you more and why? Louisville gashing Notre Dame's run defense or Notre Dame's offensive line's inability to establish a run early on?
The latter. The latter.
Go ahead,
yeah, I agree.
Yeah, for me, very much so. It's Notre Dame has to be able to establish itself along the offensive line, and Louisville has been disruptive. As I noted, they've protected relatively well, although really, as you study the Louisville box scores, I'm only putting much stock into this last weekend's game against Georgia Tech because Austin Peay, a really good FCS program, but still an FCS program with 64 scholarship kids as compared to Louisville's 85. And then Jacksonville State transitioned from FCS to FBS about a decade ago, still a group of 5 program. So Louisville's only faced one tough opponent. It hasn't traveled away from home. And the Cardinals' defensive line was incredibly disruptive. To me, the Cardinals did far more last year on the defensive line to win that game than what they did on the offensive line. Notre Dame also had some uncharacteristic mistakes from its offensive line in that game last year, and then turnovers from Sam Hartman, who I thought really went into a shell in that contest. So it's absolutely, from where I'm evaluating this game, imperative that Notre Dame offensive line win.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think it's a good. Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I would choose that one between the two.
Yeah. Okay.
And I did. I mean, between offensive line, defensive line. I did want to comment about Jacksonville State because I'm pretty sure they won at least 9 games last year. I think they won double digits. So they're probably transitioning because what happens to those group of 5 schools, if they won 10 games last year, they were picked, their talent was picked apart, picked from their team. Louisville had 610 yards against them. That of the 3 games, that's the one that I've seen the least. I watched the entire Austin Peay game and the Georgia Tech game as well. And they only had 63 yards rushing. And to your point, John, about that being the only one that matters as far as their running, they averaged 6.5 against Jacksonville State and 10.3 against Austin Peay, but just 2.6 against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's defense is still kind of hit and miss, but they held Louisville to just 14 first downs. So I want to look at that game a little bit further. Louisville had 7 tackles for loss against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has a good offense. It's just a team that it scared me last year when you see the talent that they have. They still have a bunch of talent. And to your point, Tim, Jeff Brom does a really, really nice job of bringing talent in from other schools and getting a chemistry rolling right from the start. They've won 14. They kind of fell apart at the end of last year, but for the better part of a year and a half, they've been they've been really, really good, and they have a bunch of options at the skill positions.
Yeah, you know what's interesting about last year, and because I want to lend credence to the question, we all think it's the offensive line, but the defensive line did have a poor game last year. There was actually some run fits from the back end with Leofau and DJ Brown that turned conversions on 3rd and 4 into 45-yard runs and 21-yard touchdowns. That's a killer. You can't have that, obviously. You would expect not to have that again. Jordan is gone, but I forgot about this going to that game. I look back at some of our previews. The game before Notre Dame, the game before they played Notre Dame, Louisville played NC State, and they ran 29 times for 20 yards. They ran for 185 yards against Notre Dame.
Notre Dame didn't
see that thing coming. There was something weird that night.
Notre Dame didn't come to play in that game, and that, unfortunately, that's been part of the growing pains of the Marcus Freeman era. So they should come ready to play this time. There should be no excuses. Tim, I'm going to separate those next two questions and start with the one from Packy P. I know the buck stops with Freeman, but in my opinion, the offensive woes are on Mike Denbrock. He was brought in as a high-level experienced offensive coordinator that would develop the offense and game plan around its flaws. Freeman, from day one, acknowledged his offensive shortcomings. Are we fans underestimating the O-line and QB issues, even though we have yet to play a good team, or did we overestimate Mike Denbrock?
Well, I think I'll harken back to an old, really old Johnny Majors quote when he was talking about his coaching style, and he said, "I'm a hard worker. I'm not a miracle worker." And I think you can apply some of that with Mike Denbrock. Look, yeah, he's paid $2.25 million to deliver results, and they had one completely wholly unacceptable second half where you can debate whether Denbrock should have taken Riley Leonard out or Marcus Freeman should have. We know Riley Leonard has way too much competitive character to ever take himself out unless he truly believed he was hurting the team, and he didn't believe that. But otherwise, like we referred to moments ago, these coaches are tailoring game plans that not only match their strengths, but also try to mask some weaknesses. And the strength right now is Riley Leonard running the football, because due to his inaccuracies, the more he runs, the wider the windows get for him to throw the football into. And that's what Notre Dame absolutely has to have. So I think it's a confluence of factors, but all of those are applicable. Then you get the fact that Denbrock comes here and doesn't get to work physically with Riley Leonard over the course of spring, because Leonard has one practice and then surgery on his foot and is out the remainder of the spring, and really didn't get back full tilt until the middle of summer, fully healthy. And by then you're not supposed to work with the football. You can have some instructional time with them per week, but I don't think per NCAA rules you can work with a football. You certainly can't do like full 11 on 11, all stuff with your coaches present. So it was a difficult rebuild to begin with because of the offensive line and how much was gone. Then you're plugging a new quarterback into it behind that. And then the quarterback doesn't get spring with the O-line. And then now 3 of your projected starters are out on that O-line.
I know that Mike Denbrock warned us it was going to happen. I know people
Yeah,
don't want to hear it. I don't blame you. You don't want to hear it, but he did warn us every possible moment that it was going to be a work in progress. But now that progress has to start showing more.
No, it does, but I mean, I find it a little difficult to just lay all this on Denbrock, and Packy P isn't laying it all on Denbrock.
No,
He
he's
said
not
the buck stop. Yeah, I get that. And everybody roll their eyes at any point when I start saying this, but personal experience. I took a high school baseball team to the state championship game in 2008, and the next year went 8-18. Now, did I get stupid in one year, or
Probably, yes. You probably.
I'm sure on some fronts I did, but it didn't matter what button I pushed the next year. We couldn't. It just wasn't going to work. And when Denbrock inherits an offensive line like that, plus, I mean, the whole indoctrination of a new system, it's just very, very difficult to expect. You can't do it with mirrors. You can't at this level. You may fool an opponent a play here or a play there, but you're not going to fool them the whole game if your offensive line isn't working together and in chemistry with one another. So I take a little bit of the blame away from from Denbrock, but I agree with you, Tim, and to a large extent, Packy P as well. It's going to have to start picking up. I mean, it's up to him to make sure that Riley Leonard does have a set of plays that he feels comfortable with and they can have success with.
I think it's on a related note here, Andy Davis. Andy looks like a team that is on its third offensive coordinator and third QB in 3 years. Do you think the switch to Denbrock is paying dividends? Obviously not yet, but how long will it take?
I mean, I think the switch paid dividends week 1 against Texas
Week 1.
A&M.
Yeah.
I absolutely do.
But it didn't in week 2. I mean, there's this no, if we're giving credit for a good game plan that worked against A&M, we cannot not take away from week 2.
Well, yeah.
Agreed.
I mean, look,
I mean,
Agreed.
somebody had to get out of that situation, and it had
Agreed.
to be done.
what's the official name for truth serum? Like, I wish we could dispense some truth serum and find out why the second half was played offensively the way it was. We all know he was hurt, but just freaking tell us he was hurt, or tell us he couldn't run because we were afraid how damn much more we might hurt him. Just tell us that, and then I think we would all feel a lot better. But I do think that Denbrock is paying dividends right now. I think that we've seen growth and development out of the offensive game plan, especially the past 2 weekends against Purdue and Miami of Ohio. Neither a great opponent, but Purdue's a P4 resident. Miami of Ohio is the defending MAC champion. And guess what? Because of Denbrock's evolutions in the offense the past 2 weeks, Louisville suddenly has a hell of a lot more eye candy that it has to look at as it studies film of Notre Dame this week. And we still know there are layers to it that Mike Denbrock hasn't revealed.
Yeah, I don't think Denbrock should be exonerated for the second half of Northern Illinois. And Tim, you're right. Somebody has to step up and say, we can't do what we want to do. We need to pull the trigger at this point for Angeli or whoever you want to put in there.
Hey, kudos to them, though, for not doing it against Miami of Ohio, because I thought they should, going into drive number 4.
I did too. We blame. We don't give credit for, obviously. Now, would Steve Angeli have done the same thing and rallied the troops? We don't know. He could have. But the fact of the matter is the decision to stay with Riley Leonard when they did and midway through the second quarter ended up paying dividends. They scored 28 points over the last 38 minutes.
Over the last 33 minutes.
Well, the drive started with 8 something to go.
Yeah.
That's why I say that.
Offensive line question from Collie 123. I think it's Collie. Could be Coley. Assess the play of Rocco Spindler and Sam Pendleton. And when Billy Schroth comes back, who do you think should be the odd man out? I don't think it should be Billy Schroth. I'll let you guys go from there. How's that one?
Well, so noble of you. So noble of you, T.O. Way to fall on the cotton candy grenade.
I got it. I got that one for everybody.
Well, it was pointed out to Marcus Freeman today that Spindler and Pendleton were graded by presumably PFF have played.
I think Spindler and Coogan, Tim. Probably
Oh,
Spindler.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, it wasn't Pendleton.
Yeah.
No, it wasn't Pendleton, but Spindler, yes. And Coogan, yes, which gets me to my question from the previous week. Could this be Pat Coogan's best position, center? And I stand by that until we see otherwise. I think Pendleton last week notwithstanding, I think Pendleton's been pretty darn good when you add everything up with his first career starts. I think he's been pretty good. When Billy Schroth comes back, Billy Schroth has to play. He is one of your better offensive guards. If that means replacing Pendleton, which I don't think they'll do, then so be it. But Pendleton's coming off a bad game. Look, we don't get a chance to see all the practices. We don't know what's happening, but I don't think on any level Billy Schroth stands on the sideline when he's healthy to play.
Yeah, I think it's honestly probably TBD. I agree with both of you that if Schrouth comes back healthy, this Notre Dame season still is teeming with potential, then there's not a chance in the world you keep the guy off the field. Then you see how Rocco and Pendleton respond this week to the tough test against Louisville, and then they go into the bye week and they have 2 weeks to try and figure out exactly their best 5 offensive linemen 6 weeks into the season with 5 games down and 7 to go. So that to me is where it is. But I think we're unanimous in believing that Billy Schrouth won that starting job for a reason.
Yeah.
He took over last year and won it for a reason. And here we are.
And I don't mean to dismiss, just quickly, I don't mean to dismiss a line gelling together without Schroth and just saying, well, let's make a change right now. But I mean, Schroth was my pick. I know Ashton Craig was others and maybe the stats. Schroth was my pick as the number one lineman going into the year before anything. And he didn't do anything to dissuade me from that during the season. I would get back to Billy Schroth, even if the line improves without him, but that's not only because he's not in there that it would improve. The offense would improve.
And Schroth has still just scratched the surface of the kind of player he's capable of being. And that's true of Ashton Craig too. We saw Craig make some mistakes on the second level, a couple of holding penalties before the injury. BL Casper asks, any idea what is going on with Jaden Greathouse? Is this a product of bad QB play, sophomore slump? Is he not as good as we had hoped? I feel like his biggest highlight through 4 games is a drop pass.
I think it's a product of Mike Denbrock's evolving game plan and having to evolve the game plan to invoke more 2 tight end sets. And I am surprised that the Greathouse's snap numbers have been as relatively low as they have been the past couple of weeks. I still think he's a crucial element to Notre Dame's overall offensive health and efficacy moving forward. They've got to get him more involved. He's a really good player. He's really refined. Riley Leonard has to continue to develop trust in him, and Jaden has to earn that trust. And he probably hurt himself a little bit in that regard by dropping that deep pass against Northern Illinois, which probably changes so many conversations that we've had in the 2.5 weeks since that point in time. I don't necessarily think it's a sophomore slump per se. I think it's more weapons, whereas last year he was a necessitated weapon. So it's more weapons and it's more issues on the offense.
I have a more amateurish review of this one. I don't get it. I can't believe it. If you talk to anybody in the program, Jaden Greathouse was the second name that came up after Jeremiah Love. You talk to the offensive coordinator officially, Jaden Greathouse was the second name that came up after Jeremiah Love. I thought he'd be the easiest one to find when Mitchell Evans wasn't playing, and I thought he would shine when Mitchell Evans wasn't playing. So I don't get it. I think Jaden Greathouse should be better than he has been. I'm really surprised.
Who's second? Bo Collins has the most receptions. Who's second?
I don't know, because it was a Greathouse. He's not doing anything with him.
Okay, so I do have an explanation. It is Jaden Greathouse with 9 catches, and he's averaging 8.8 yards per catch.
That's the issue.
Last year when we saw him against Navy, he was playing on the outside. They set him down. Now he's playing in the slot receivers.
But everybody liked him in the slot, though.
I understand, but Riley Leonard hasn't been very good either. So I think when you combine, how many receptions the wideouts have, where he's aligning compared to last year when we were really excited about what he did, with Riley Leonard's inaccuracy, maybe not finding him. He's number 2 in receptions among wideouts, among everybody on the team.
Yeah.
So I think there's a few factors there. I don't think it's a sophomore slump. I just don't think that it's worked out yet. The time's going to come when Jaden Greathouse is Jaden Greathouse and the guy that we all expect him to be. But there's some factors here that have been conspiring against him so far.
I totally agree with you guys both, but he can find a way to make a couple more plays too. Jaden Greathouse.
Well, if he had the deep ball, which again, there's a really, really good chance Notre Dame's 4-0 if he makes that catch, right?
And he had a nice play. He had a nice play overturned by penalty.
Yep. So that would, if those 2 plays are made, the question's not even asked, right?
But he still made a couple of really big third down catches. He had a really big third down catch at A&M.
I understand why the question's asked by Bill.
Oh, for sure.
But
we're all surprised. I think every one of us either picked him to lead the team in receptions or be among the leaders in yards. So yeah, we're all surprised.
Well, if he leads the team in receptions, but he averages 8 yards a carry, I rescind my correct prediction on him leading the team in receptions.
Fair enough. Cool. Question from Irish 1992 may have been anticipation of Jaden Mickey's announcement today, or Marcus Freeman's announcement about Jaden Mickey. Irish 1992 asked, do you expect any backup players to shut it down after playing 4 games to preserve an extra year when they transfer in December? We have one, Jaden Mickey. Tim, you looked at the roster and considered some other guys.
It's hard for me to find one on defense because all the guys that don't get a lot of playing time have redshirted. In other words, it does you no good to shut it down. Jaden Mickey didn't redshirt. So that, it does you no good to shut it down now. You would have to have a medical redshirt. So while I don't see one, I am going to always take the over for the next 5 days and say over 0.5. People will shut it down officially or unofficially.
I just think it's for right now, the way everything is structured, I think it's a component of college football that's here to stay. It's not unique to Notre Dame. It's going to be a lot of places everywhere where guys are assessing things after 4 games, and then going in and saying, either I want a red shirt, shut me down for the rest of the year, or I want a red shirt and I will enter the transfer portal, shut me down for the rest of the year. So
Tim, did any of the names that you looked at that hadn't taken a red shirt in Mickey's position that you think could, it's still early in the week. The game 5 hasn't been
No,
played
most
yet.
guys have redshirted. Is my
Okay.
point.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's somebody you could. I mean, technically Riley Mills can do whatever he wants to, but like what I'm saying is, it just doesn't look right. It doesn't, like Mickey was an obvious. Not that Mickey was obviously going to do it, but a Mickey 3 years, true junior, his clock is ticking. Everybody else, they already
Yeah.
had their clocks paused, or
Yeah.
stalled. Say it.
Question from Statman72. I realize Riley Leonard's season is only 1/3 complete, but how would you rank the performances of Notre Dame's 3 transfer quarterbacks? Jack Cohn, Sam Hartman, Riley Leonard. If Cohn is at the top, how much do you think experience playing in the Big Ten rather than the ACC had to do with it?
Let's answer the Cone part first, because the next question is directly ranking Leonard and Hartman. From Hayden Adams Z, how would you still take Riley Leonard over Sam Hartman? We'll get to that. Cone is one for me, because he played behind a junk offensive line and still did it.
Yeah, we wanted him to come back.
Yeah.
By the end of the season, we wanted Jack Cohn to be the quarterback once again, which I still really do not accept or understand the decision by the NCAA as to why Jack Cohn was denied.
I feel like nowadays he would easily be given that extra.
Yeah, I mean that. I never got that. I never thought it was fair. Would have made a hell of a difference if Jack Cohn had come back for a second year.
Just let's combine these. What do you guys think the Big Ten has anything to do with it? I just think Cone
I don't think
better.
I don't know. I think it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it was experience. He had built on that experience. He wasn't coming off of a completely truncated year, then losing his spring, and then dealing with all the other various things for Riley Leonard. I appreciate the question. I think it's a very valid one, and you all also know where I stand on where Notre Dame has to be at the quarterback position moving forward, and it's got to stop the rentals. But I don't think we can answer it just yet. We can have a better idea of how to answer it after this weekend, because I thought Sam Hartman was terrible last year against Louisville, and I thought he was really changed after the opening possession pick that he threw, and it was a tough play, and you're throwing to a young guy, and I get it. You were frustrated with your receivers at that point, but I just thought we saw a different Sam Hartman really for much of the rest of the season from that Louisville game on last year, and not saw a different Sam Hartman in a positive way. I want to see Riley Leonard this week back in ACC play, back against a very quality power conference opponent. He was very solid at Texas A&M, didn't turn the ball over, led them to a very significant win. So I just think it's too early to rank them, but I understand the question and all of the contentions about Cohn and Hartman and now Riley Leonard.
All right, so we're going to tie in that next question, Tim. Hayden Adams Z, would you still take Riley Leonard over Sam Hartman?
I need to see the Louisville game, because here's Sam Hartman against Louisville last year. Not 100% of this is his fault when I say the word pressure or sack, obviously. Okay. Interception, sack, false start on a lineman. That's not him. I just wrote that down for a mistake. Fumble by Hartman, sack. Personal foul. This is a positive for Hartman. Personal foul by Blake Fisher that wiped away a 30-yard gain to Mitchell Evans. As John Bryce points out, that's a 45-yard penalty. Third down hurry, fourth down hurry, incomplete. Interception. 3 straight passes to Tobias Merriweather, so I'm editorializing there. I think that was a bad call on his part. Hurry, interception, fumble. If Riley Leonard does that against Louisville, he would be last on my list of these 3 guys. Other than that, that's a very bad game by a 5th-year senior.
Hayden Adams Z.
6-year senior.
6th-year senior, sorry. Yeah.
Because we got a lot of things on our mind, I'm not sure I'm going to preserve that question. Please submit it again with another question if you like next week, and we'll see if our perspective is a little bit different. We're going to wrap up with a question from Jim Booney, CRS. He seems to make this
This is consistent. Jack
podcast
Cohn with an
every
open
week.
receiver at the
Yeah.
10-yard range. We
I
love it.
don't know him. I'm not being biased. I read the question before I see the name, or I try to anyway. At the beginning of the season, a successful season looked like hosting a home playoff game. With a third of the season played, how would you define a successful season now? Based on what you've seen thus far, what are your more reasonable expectations for this team?
I have an easy answer.
Go ahead, Tio.
Playing a playoff game is my reasonable expectation for the team.
Yeah.
I'm not predicting it. That is my reasonable expectation as a successful season, is making the playoffs now.
I think if you're not playing a playoff game, it's a very disappointing season. So I don't know how then the flip side of that, you wouldn't term success. I still think this team, we haven't seen enough out of it to believe it can reel off the requisite number of wins. But football's crazy and a lot of different stuff happens. And we just saw Michigan bully USC, which was one of those things I kept waiting to want to see. We'll see how USC continues to navigate through Big Ten play. Yeah, I think my expectations are Notre Dame should make the playoffs. And if Notre Dame does not make the playoffs, then it's an unsuccessful season.
I totally agree. And I would imagine that hosting a home playoff game is off the board.
Yeah, I mean, it's plausible.
I
A lot
mean-
of stuff has to happen, though. But you could get 8, but
Yeah, you can get in the top 8.
yeah, you can get 8. You're not going to be at 5. They can't be 5.
You need Texas A&M to keep winning. And look, now
Yeah.
you
Yeah,
went
I'm
and won
sorry.
at A&M, and then A&M went and smoked Florida, and then Florida went and smoked a really bad Mississippi State team. So USC won on a neutral site against LSU. You need LSU to keep winning. You need to be able to go win at USC. So I don't think hosting one's off the table. I think firmly the 5 and 6 seeds are off the table for Notre Dame.
I apologize. Thanks for correcting me. I was thinking in terms of 5, 6 seeds. And yeah, no, look, still the same team. You've had some injuries, still the same, and maybe not the same optimism that we had before. But it's time for Notre Dame needs to put their big boy pants on here and start playing like the damn preseason top 5 to 7 team that they were picked to be. And that was legitimate. I wouldn't change my perspective on that, my position on going into the season. Start playing like you're supposed to. Start maximizing the talent that you have going into the season. Start maximizing the talent that you thought was good enough in order to let Peacock come in and film everything that you do. All of that was done because you were so damn confident that you were good enough to do that. Start playing that way. Start coaching that way. How's that? Is that a good pep talk?
I'm ready for the gym now. I'm pretty damn inspired.
I'm ready to go to the
I'm gonna add bench press.
wearing green.
Yeah, I'm gonna add bench press into today's work.
I
So
gave-
nice
Irish
work.
wear green. We don't wear green. Let's go. Wear blue.
I gave a lot of pep
Captains
talks like
fighting
that.
against the green. All right.
And
Do you
we
hear
still
about that,
finished
Jack?
8-18.
I think it's great they might not wear green. They're going to wear green, but it would be hilarious if they
They
don't.
will wear green. They will.
Appreciate you, Coach Priester.
All right, man. We're
All
going to
right.
wrap up.
Hey,
And,
guys.
we want to say that if you enjoy this Irish Illustrated Insider podcast, you'll also love our videos we're posting on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Be sure to look for us on those platforms. Give us a like, a follow, and share with your friends. And please consider being a subscriber by joining with irishillustrated.com. Until next time, Tim Priester, Tim O'Malley from Irish Illustrated, John Bryce from the Football Scoop and Irish Illustrated. This has been Irish Illustrated Insider.